Kyle. Like he mentioned before, my name is Devin Smolak. I'm a licensed crop insurance agent for the state of Maine. I work for Crop Growers LLP. I'll start this presentation with a little bit of an educational background on the program before passing it to our regional livestock specialist, Tristan Peterson, and then conclude with Farm Credit Use Consultant, Ethan Robertson. So let's begin. We too have a disclaimer. This presentation is for general guidance only, and you should really consult the specific crop provisions, special provisions, or basic provisions provided by the Risk Management Agency, and I can definitely send those over if you're ever interested in them. In addition, we encourage you to consult with our agents for specific guidance concerning your operation. We're very much in one size does not fit all, so it's really important to have conversations before enrolling in the program. Okay, so you may have already enrolled in milk programs this year. Dairy revenue protection is sold by a private agent, while the dairy margin coverage, which ensures the difference between milk price and feed costs, is something you would have already enrolled in with the Farm Service Agency. Thankfully, both programs are allowed at the same time, and there's no limit to DRP. There is an LGM program provided by a private licensed agent. That's not allowed for the same months. Before you enroll in DRP, it'd be a good idea to get with a licensed agent and just have a discussion beforehand over which program works best for your operation. Okay, what is DRP? DRP provides protection against a decline in quarterly revenue from milk sales for Class 3 and Class 4 futures. And you have that ability to enroll up to 5 nearby quarters. Currently, the farthest out you can enroll right now is Quarter 3 of 2022, and the closest quarter you can enroll in is Quarter 3 of 2021. The Dairy Revenue Protection Program offers 2 pricing options, both based off the same milk. The first option is class price, which separates the endorsement into Class 3 and Class 4 milk prices, or a blend. And then the second one is the component option, which takes the same milk, but you enroll it between a blend of the butter, fat, protein, and milk solids price based off of your own component values. Unlike other crop insurance policies, you may enroll as much milk as you wish, up to what you produce, or as little for each quarter. And you have the option of an 80 to 95% coverage level, and that's a percentage of the milk price for that day in 5% increments. In addition, to make this an insurance program to get us that subsidy, it is indexed using group level milk production, which is Group 6 of the Northeast for us here in Maine. And it takes from agricultural marketing service data for production per cow, which I'll go into that more into this presentation. Okay, so if you're familiar with our revenue protection program for corn, soybeans, and wheat, this program is based on the volatility of the market. So premiums will be higher during periods of higher volatility. So if you are enrolling in that Quarter 3 of 2022, the market sees more risk further out than it does in the nearby future. So the premiums are going to reflect that, and it's just something to keep in mind, assuming that the prices are riskier further out. Here's a slide just showing the premium support. As long as you're in conservation compliance, you are eligible for a subsidy to make this program more affordable. And this slide is just showing you that subsidy compared to the coverage levels available. So as a producer, we have 5 main decisions to make when enrolling in DRP. The first of that is what milk price you're going to enroll in, what floor are you going to set for your business. And that's a daily sales price. It's available to us from 4:30 Central Standard Time of that day up until 9 a.m. Central Standard Time of the following day. So that's the window of time you have to decide and enroll in that value of milk to protect. Secondly, you have that option of the amount of production you wish to cover. Again, you're not required to insure all of your milk, and you're not required to insure it all at once as well. So you do have that ability to get your feet wet, maybe enroll a little bit of a milk at a time, or wait for better sales prices, or you can go all in. There's no limit as long as it's up to what you can produce. The third main producer decision is the coverage level. You have the option of 80 to 95% of your revenue guarantee. Typically, I've seen 95%, and further into the presentation, I'll demonstrate why that is the case. But that is another option available to you. And then the fourth producer decision is which quarterly endorsements you wish to purchase. So I guess that's the big when. When do you want to protect your milk? What quarters do you see most risky to your business? And then finally, I'm going to briefly go over this, is whether to use a protection factor beyond one. So protection factor is a discussion you really want to have with your agent for your personal operation, because it has many uses. Typically, I see it used when the producer wants to protect the full value of their milk, but isn't sure if they're going to make that production requirement for that quarter. Again, this being a program based on animals, we do have required thresholds, and we have some leniency in this program. So you must be able to deliver 85% of the declared covered milk, or else your indemnity is reduced, but not your premium. And that means, so if you enroll 10,000 hundredweight in a quarter, you must be able to produce 8,500 hundredweight, and that proof would be through your milk checks for that quarter. Similarly, if you enroll in the component option, you need to be able to provide at least 90% of that component level on that milk. So say you have 4% butter fat, you must be able to prove at least 3.6. Again, otherwise your policy is recalculated based on your actual component values, but the premium is not. So, okay, we'll begin with a class pricing example. We're in the state of Maine. It doesn't differ county to county, but I chose Kennebec. My effective date, which is the date I locked in, was April 16th. 100% protection factor. I've enrolled 1 million pounds, and my share is 100%. Now, I split up my endorsement into 2 endorsements just to make it easier for everyone here today. So I'm going to begin with enrolling 100% of Class 3, which, if you look from left to right, you look at Class 3 with an expected price of $17.75 for that day. You multiply it by your weight. So I chose 100%. Again, you can use a blend if you wish. And I would add that with my Class 4, which is 0% weight. So my expected value for that quarter would be $17.75. Now, since this is an insurance program, we get to choose a coverage level and insure a percentage of that price. So I've listed here the highest coverage level and the lowest, just so you can see the differences, the advantages and the disadvantages to the different coverage levels. So if you take that $17.75 and you multiply it by 80%, you're going to get that guarantee per hundredweight, which is $14.20. So that would be your price floor. In contrast, if you chose that 95% level, you get a much higher floor of $16.86 per hundredweight. I'd like to take it a step further so you can see when the program would actually start paying, because we definitely need to pay our bills. So we're going to take out that premium per hundredweight and get an actual target number we're looking at. So as you can see, for 80%, it is 5 cents per hundredweight, which wouldn't help our $14.50 floor. whereas that 95% coverage level, the premium is much higher, but you're protecting a higher value as well. And there's more risk on the market and more likelihood of falling below that $16.41 per hundredweight. On the far right, you can see producer premium and total premium. I just like to look at that number to contrast the difference in prices based on the subsidy. So the total premium shows you how much you would pay in total if you weren't subsidized, and the producer premium shows you what you would owe with the subsidy. If you take a look at that bottom left corner, you're going to see something called the expected production per cow. Since we're in that pooled region in the state of Maine, we share the same production per cow as New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and a couple of other states. It's not based off of your own production on your milk check. It's just put there in place so that we can have this as an insurance program, and it makes it actuarially sound. Okay. Below is just the class 4 pricing. It's exactly the same as the class 3. We just changed the weight, and I just wanted to show you a split endorsement. Now, if you tend to have a higher component value and you want to capture more of the value of your milk, we have the component pricing example available. And what that does is it's similar to the class 3 and class 4. It takes from those numbers, but it represents it through component values. So you would look at, instead of class 3, you'd look at that butter fat expected value per pound, and you would multiply that to your actual declared test pounds to give you the calculated value. What we have right now is $20.01. Again, if you did the 95%, you'd multiply it and would get $19.01. You take out that premium, you'd be looking at a revenue floor of $18.62. But again, I want you to just be aware that you're looking at the butter, fat, protein, and other solids in one endorsement. So there is a possibility of the protein price rising and the butter fat falling. That can cancel each other out. Again, the expected production per cow is the same no matter what pricing option you use. This happens to be a different quarter, but I just want to demonstrate the difference of the two pricing options. Okay, I'm going to run through a quick indemnity example taken from last quarter, quarter 1 of 2021. Above, we have our expected values. So I decided to use component option. My test components are 4, 3, 2, 8, 9. I took the daily expected value of the butter, fat, protein, and other solids, multiplied them across as we did before, and applied that 95% coverage. So my floor was $18.71 expected for quarter 1 of 2021. Okay, 3 months go by. It turns out that we get a total average of $18.39 per hundredweight for 2021, and 95% of that is $17.47. We take those two numbers on the right and we subtract them out. So we take our guarantee and we subtract out the final price. It happened to be lower, and we get that $1.24 difference. We'll take that $1.24, we'll multiply it by the number of hundredweights we've enrolled in, which happens to be 10,000 hundredweight, to give us a total indemnity of $12,375.56. Now, since we pay our bills here, we're going to take out that premium. So we're going to take that $12,000, we're going to subtract out the $4,000 in premium. It's going to give us our net indemnity of $8,375.55. So that's how the program played out last quarter. And I'm just going to go over this briefly again. It's put in place for making this an actuarially sound insurance program gives us that subsidy. It takes the expected pooled production and it divides it from the actual production pool to get us an adjustment factor, which for presentation's sake, it will either increase your indemnity or decrease your indemnity based on what's on the market. Okay, what's covered? So the policy provides insurance for the difference between the revenue guarantee and the actual milk revenue times your actual share and the protection factor of Class 3 and Class 4 futures. It's caused by natural occurrences in the market. It's not going to be directly affected by Class 1 or Class 2, and it may differ from your milk check, what you see on your milk check. It does not insure against any death or loss of cattle or destruction or any other damage whatsoever. It's strictly that difference between the revenue guarantee and the actual milk revenue. Okay. In sum, DRP creates a floor on the milk price to protect against a downward swing in the market without sacrificing that upward movement like you would with a put. If you know your cost of production or you can find that number, that will allow you to set a target milk price of which you can look and see when this program would work best to your advantage. And it's important for electing coverage on your policy. And with that premium support, it makes this program highly affordable to use and protect the milk price. So next steps, I suggest you develop a relationship with an agent that understands your business, your risk tolerance, what goals you hope to achieve. And this is personal. Please establish an application before you endorse milk. It's not a requirement. It's really a best practice. So like I mentioned before, we have that small window of time between the price release and the endorsement time, so that 4:30 to 9 a.m. The worst thing in the world can be at 8 o'clock you decide you want to endorse milk finally, but you have to fill out that application, and your brother, who is on the LLC, has the social security number, but he doesn't have it, his wife has it, and you can't get that number on time, and you miss out on endorsing milk. So best practice, fill out that application beforehand so that, when you do decide to endorse milk, you just fill out the endorsement and have it done with. And I can't stress this enough, set that target price beforehand as well. Figure out what that cost of production is. See what price you need to look for before you endorse your milk. So as mentioned before, saving questions for the end, but if you have any questions after this presentation or during and you don't get to your question, feel free to contact me by email or by phone. I'll be happy to get you an answer. If I don't know, I'll ask someone who does. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. Next will be the market updates with Tristan. So thank you very much.
All right. Can you guys see? Can I get confirmation we can see what my screen here?
Yes, we can see your screen and the tool.
Perfect. So thank you for that, Devin. So now that we understand the program a little bit better, and we've kind of set some numbers in there as far as what's our cost of production, we've got a general grasp on the program. The next part to kind of utilize is how do we implement this on farm? So what do we do to guarantee our operation through another year? Hopefully we never go through another 2020, but how do we put all these things into place to give us that opportunity to protect the operation moving forward? So in my market update section, I'm just going to give a couple short little examples or things to look at within some of the tools that you as producers have available to you through Crop Growers and Farm Credit East here. to just show you how to make this decision a little easier based off of those numbers that we're seeing. So what I'm in right now is our dairy analyzer tool. So it's a dairy revenue protection analyzer tool that is a tool that's been developed proprietary to Farm Credit East and crop growers here to allow producers to make this decision a little easier. So what I'm going to be working with right now, you as a producer have full access to. Reach out to Devin, get a hold of her. She can, once you get that application established, she can get you signed into the tool, give you some chances to load some of your own data in there, make it farm specific. So with that, I'm going to jump in, and we're just going to kind of go through what we see here in the markets for some of the up and coming quarters and some of the opportunities that you as a producer have available. So on the left side here, we see our historical prices. So this is everything that's happened on, I should have added. We're seeing historical prices on class 3, which is in our red, and on class 4, which is in our green. So as we look at these prices and the trends that we're seeing, everything on the left here is what's happened. So that's exactly what's happened in the market on those 3-month averages, quarterly averages there based on the program. We see a lot of peaks and valleys. We see the ups and the downs, and really, listening to Devin's portion of the presentation, if we can understand our cost of production and we can implement a plan to establish that revenue floor, we're hoping to take some of those valleys out. So we're hoping to take the lows out here of 14 and 1387 all the way down to 1320 there in 16. So how do we try and remove those valleys? Well, on the right side here, we see the expected prices for the up and coming quarters. So I've got quarter 3 of 2021 selected. And what we're seeing here is what the price has done since the opening of that quarter, or since that quarter's been available for purchase through the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So we see here, we all know what happened at the beginning of 2020. Some great class 3 prices, great class 4 prices, and then COVID happened, and we kind of flattened out on some of those prices. Well, looking on the right side of this graph, we can see the opportunity that's been put in front of us now. So in front of us, as we look at this, we're seeing prices that we haven't seen realistically in the past 5 years. If we compare that to the left there on our class 3 price, we haven't seen class 3 prices in that 1947 range, with the disclaimer that we did in 2020 because of the food box program. In my opinion, and Ethan may correct me here a little bit in his part, but in my opinion, that gave us a false sense on the class 3 price. So we haven't seen 1947 prices over the last 5 years. So this gives you as a producer an opportunity to really lock in some high prices that minus 2014, we haven't been available to us on the class 3 side. And we see the same thing on the class 4 side. So we see that 1740, we haven't hit $17 class 4 prices in a long time. And COVID really had a sharp impact on that class 4 price, as we see in the historical averages there as well. So what I like to do is I like to figure out how the prices we see today stack up to the past. So if I take that 1947 and I multiply that by our 95% coverage option, so that 95% coverage option, the option we're using there to protect the highest price, that gives me a price floor of $18.49. So $18.49 for this third quarter here, if we compare that to what's happened in the past down this line here, we've only had 1 year above that. So knowing kind of some of the historical side of things, this can help us make a better decision on farm. The other thing we look at obviously is our cost of production. If our cost of production is running in the $18 range and we're setting a floor of $18.50, we've ensured some sort of profitability on that operation based off of those class 3 prices. So as we look into some of the market dynamics and what happens within the market, we also want to look at what's already happened in the market and see if those prices can impact that influence on our decision there. Same story on the class 4 price for Q3 of 2021. So that 1740 multiplied out on our 95% coverage there is giving us about a $16.50 class 4 floor. So compared to the historical on that 1650, we've come close a couple times, but this still gives us some confidence in the market to make that informed decision of, we know what the prices are doing now. We see, if we look at this over the past year, we see these prices have gone nothing but up. So we can now use the program, we can now use the tool to make that informed decision on those markets, knowing we're on an upward climb. You know, I know one of the things that Devin talked about a little bit, and I think Ethan will get into it a little bit more here in a bit, but grabbing these opportunities throughout time. So I'll get into strategy a little bit too in my market side. As we see markets increase, we grab smaller amounts of milk throughout that increase to really minimize the regret there of any potential, I enrolled too much, I didn't roll enough. We spread that coverage out to grab the best price. And if you were layering, we call it the layering approach at Crop Growers. If you were layering throughout that enrollment, we'd really be setting now some super high prices for the up and coming quarter, the quarter that is still unknown. You know, I think that was probably one of the big messages of 2020 was the unknown message, you know, what's going to happen next. Well, knowing the tools that we have in front of us on the market side, now we can create some known. You know, milk pricing has always been unknown. Now we can set an actual price and create that known floor. So, you know, just to kind of hop through some of these different quarters, let's take a look at quarter 4. I won't go into as much detail, but just wanted to show that we're still in that positive upward movement. We still have a lot of room to protect a really high floor that, when tied to our cost of production, could be ensuring profitability on that operation. So from a market update, I just wanted to help everybody understand a little better where markets are today, where they were a year ago, and where we're going. We're definitely seeing that positive impact in the markets with the you know, hopefully the foreseen end of COVID. We've got some more global trade happening. You know, the CWT program or cooperative is working together, making big sells in April for cheese. So we've got a lot of hope in the market, and now is the time, in my opinion, looking at businesses, now's the time to make that informed decision of, does the market today guarantee us some sort of profitability or break-even milk price through the end of the year? Even coming into 2022, we see the same opportunities there. So what do we have available, and how can we protect our business to prevent from another COVID, from another sharp market downturn? So that's my market update and how to use the tool a little bit more to help us understand where the markets are, how they've been, and how to make that decision moving forward. So I thank everybody for the time. I really appreciated the opportunity to speak with Maine again. I know I was up there a couple of years ago, but it's always great to talk to you guys. So thanks again, Devin, for that opportunity. And with that, I will pass it off to Ethan.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
We can see some pictures of, looks like your kids. Now we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I've got some more demonstration here of how to use the Crop Growers tool for looking at the DRP and how it can work with your organization. Tristan has shown us some of the market dynamics and so forth, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about how to do the actual quotes and how you may want to look at those and how I look at them with my clients from a consulting perspective. So to start with, the basics of this, you start by selecting the state that you're in. We've got every state listed in there. Presumably Most of the people joining us today are from Maine. You choose the quarter that you're looking to get a quote for the protection on, and you can see we can go out a little ways. So choose some different quarters. Of course, we can't select the quarter that we're in or previous quarters, but we can select the future ones out a little ways there. Then you would select how much milk you want to insure. Again, this is an unlimited level of up to the amount of milk that you produce. Of course, you can't insure more than you produce, but unlike some of the other programs that you may be familiar with where you're limited to 5 million pounds or something like that, you can insure as much of your production as you like or as little as you like. This fills in automatically with the date today. The coverage level, Devin went over that a little bit on where you may select. You know, we usually recommend that you do 95%, but you do have some options there. And then we get into how you want to select. I apologize for that. Hold on just a moment here. How you want to select your coverage, whether you want to do that based on your components or whether you want to do that based on the class 3 or 4 prices. As long as I can remember my password, we should be okay. There we go. Hold on just a moment while that loads. Okay, so we're to the point where you can select either based on your components and select a higher or lower butterfat test and protein test, or use the class factors. This gets into some strategy, whether you'd like to use the butterfat and protein, or whether you would like to use higher class 4 or class 3 on your weighting factor. Oftentimes, I think you'll hear from Tristan and Devin that they like to choose an endorsement for class 3 and then go back and do an endorsement that will be all of class 4 rather than choosing 50-50 within one endorsement. But that's some strategy that they would get together with you on the farm and help you decide the best. That's sort of similar with this protection factor. Usually we leave that at 1. There are some instances where you may want to boost that a little bit, and that's kind of some more technicalities that Devin and Tristan can get into with you. So once you've got that set, it starts to build your quote down here. And this shows your basis analysis as well, which is something that I get into with my clients a lot. One of the things that can really make this tool powerful is knowing your cost of production. You can see that number listed down here at $17.10, and also your basis. So your cost of production is how much it costs you to make 100 weight of milk. And this $17.10 is a pretty good number, especially for Maine and New England. A lot of people would be a little higher than that, and I think that's fine, and we can still show how this product could help you even with a higher cost of production. On the expected basis, the basis is the difference between, the easiest way to describe it is sort of the difference between the Boston blend price that your co-op announces, that's announced and what your milk price is based on, and what you actually get paid. So the difference there is usually things like quality. It could be PPD. It could be other things that go into this basis. Most commonly, it's qualities and other bonuses, and of course your component level. If your components are higher than the Boston Blend which is based on 3.5% butterfat and 3.0% protein. So if your components are higher than that, you would get paid a little bit more than the Boston Blend. The other thing in Maine, and one of the reasons we wanted to have a separate workshop for Maine was just to discuss the tier program and how that plays into this. So really when doing this quote and looking at your basis analysis, you want to think about the tier payments that you might get as basis, right? That's based on the Boston Blend. It's extra money above and beyond the Boston Blend, and it would go in on this basis line is where you should put that. There's a couple of different ways to calculate that. Some of the larger farms especially may move through the different tier levels and would have a higher basis on like the 3rd quarter and 4th quarter of the year, and then that starts to tick down a little bit in the 1st and 2nd, where the tier program resets with Maine's fiscal year on June 1st. So usually people get everybody in the state gets the highest amount of tier money on June's milk paid in your July check. So you might insure quarters differently based on that, based on how that tier premium goes in. So based on this is showing the expected revenue. So what you're expecting the price would be. This shows the revenue guarantee based on what we chose up here on our classes and so forth and the coverage level. Then we put in our basis here of $1.70. This shows how much the premium would be for this particular endorsement, for this particular policy, for this particular coverage that we're looking at. And then the expected revenue floor adds up the revenue guarantee plus your basis minus that premium amount. So this is sort of your all-in price after you've paid for the policy, after you think about what your basis is going to be. This is really the revenue floor that you're setting. Now, not all of that is coming from the insurance product, but with that insurance product, that's what you could use for a budget number. So one of the things that I do with a lot of dairy farms with the Dairy Profit Analyzer program on a monthly or quarterly basis is do a monthly cash flow budget. It's always hard to try and project the milk price, and to project your profit, you kind of have to have an idea of what your income is going to be, and it's always anybody's guess, right? If you're using a tool like this, you're really setting that revenue floor that you could use in your budget. Okay, so this is showing here the cost of production, and you would enter your own cost of production, you'd enter your own basis, and then it can show you what the results would be. So this is what the policy would look like, guaranteeing a floor here of $20.45 for a price of 30 cents a hundredweight. This one using the class blend, all class 3 and no class 4 in this particular instance is about a penny more for a little bit less revenue floor, okay, for about 4 cents less. So this is something that Devin and Tristan could really help you think about and strategize on how that might work and how it might work for your operation when you're thinking about whether you're using class or whether you're using the components. So again, you can see here your basis. If your basis is mostly based on components and you've set your components level a little bit higher, that money is going into the expected revenue instead of the basis in this instance. If the basis is all tier program, you could expect these two numbers to be pretty similar, right? Okay. All right. Just to look quickly too, if we use this expected basis is sort of built off of the history that we've put into this. So you can put up to 3 years history of your milk checks into this program, and it'll help you show what your expected basis is based on historical numbers. So in Maine, it could make a big difference depending which quarters you choose, what that basis might be historically, again, based on the tier payments and so forth. So that's part of the reason it's changing here on a quarterly basis is the way that we set up this demonstration would show that typically there was higher tier payments and therefore higher basis in that third and fourth quarter, is how that's going to show up. If we click on this button here to show all quarters, this shows 5 quarters worth, if you had selected that many, and shows how you set up your coverage. In this case, on these quotes, it shows your expected basis. This section here is for the components. If you ran it with components, this section here is with the class blend. And again, it shows your various basis based on the quarters, based on historical information. In loading that historical information, depending on the co-op that you're with, it can be really easy to download an Excel spreadsheet or an Excel version of your milk checks. If you can't download the Excel spreadsheet, we could still enter it based off of your milk checks, based off of previous history. Some of the folks that work with me with various programs, either the Dairy Benchmark or with the Dairy Profit Analyzer, that's something that I'm entering and discussing with them on a regular basis. So it's as easy as an email to your agent with that information, so they can load it in and use those numbers for strategizing or getting it entered in that program with me and talking about that. And the same with the cost of production. The cost of production is one of those, depends how detailed you want to get on how long it could take you to really calculate that number. But using this revenue protection program and this analyzer to help you budget and really determine having your cost of production determined ahead of time, and then being able to know exactly what your revenue floor is going to be, what you can bank on bare minimum or what you can budget on bare minimum, can really put you in a good place as far as planning, and a different place than dairy farmers have been, for a long time, really trying to figure out how to project budget numbers and so forth. This could be especially handy if you're going through a big change, if you're going to add an improvement to the farm, like a new parlor or different things like that, to try and budget on how to do that, how to work with your bank, your crop growers agent or your consultant, however you want to, whatever mix of people you have on your team to help you budget and decide on that. This can be a really powerful tool. The last thing that I kind of wanted to review is something that I've had people talk to me about before, is how do I get this set up and make sure that I don't miss the boat? I don't necessarily have somebody calling me all the time. I don't have enough money to pay somebody to watch the markets for me and call me when I should get in. I don't have anybody that knows my operation well enough to be able to monitor that and call me and tell me when I should endorse some milk, certain portions, when I should layer in, as Tristan was talking about. It's probably going to be rare when you want to declare all of your milk at once. It may happen, but more often than not, you may want to layer in and do a chunk now when the price is good, and another chunk a little bit later. And as you get to budgeting, if you're able to contract other expenses, say in your business, like your feed, maybe your fuel, maybe your fertilizer and your seed, that all makes you even more sure of your cost of production. So when you set that floor, you're even more sure of your cost of production, and you're even more sure of what your profit is going to be. So how do I do that? How do I make sure not to miss the boat on that? Well, we have some alerts that we can set in here. And one of the things I kind of want to say about this tool is you can use as little or as much as you want on this tool, and you can have somebody like me or Devin or Tristan help you get it set up and put some of the history in, and then help you set up the alerts, and maybe you never get in it again. Or maybe you're the kind of person who loves to analyze the history and wants to, check this every morning over a cup of coffee. But either way, what I'm getting at here is being able to set some alerts. If you click on that market dynamics, and then when you get in here, click on the alerts tab, this particular farm that we have has set up a bunch of different alerts, right? So for this period, if the expected DRP price, and you can see this was last year, so this was the alert that was set up last year. This was what the latest price was, and this was what the trigger price. So you set the trigger price, and then you'll get a text or an email saying, hey, it's at the price that you wanted. And then maybe that means to you, you're paying close enough attention that you're gonna go right in and endorse some milk. Send Devin or Tristan an email or a text and say, hey, I'd like to endorse some milk. I've already got my application there. Please endorse this much milk. Or maybe more likely, my recommendation would be, oh, something's happening. I can't even remember exactly what I set for a trigger, but I got this message. I better call Tristan or I better call Devin and see what I'm supposed to do. And then you can have a quick discussion, and they can remind you that based on your strategy, it's probably a good idea to layer some milk in today because of that price that's given. So like I said, I've talked with other farmers that are like, I'm not real confident on using this stuff. I don't understand the futures. I don't necessarily understand this program. I haven't used it before. Well, this is another great way to get started. Have that meeting, determine a strategy, think about how you want to use this program, and then set some triggers. And 2 months later, when your triggers go off and you forgot exactly what you talked about at that meeting, you'll know that today's the day that you need to call and update that conversation and figure out what your strategy was again, and maybe layer in some milk, maybe layer in some coverage, so you can start to understand this program better and start to use it to guarantee some of your profits. So I wanted to make sure to point that out. There's plenty of other things in here to look at. This is a calendar which just tells you certain dates that you want to make sure not to miss. If you're gonna try and lock some milk in, try and put an endorsement in place. It tells you the days that the markets are closed and so forth. These are some various different price reports. Some people love to keep tabs on these so they can talk about them at the store when they're having coffee. So if that's what you like, you can find all that stuff here. Okay. Back to the premium quota is where we started. This is where you could quote, what some different endorsements might want to be. Might be if you wanted to explore some coverage. You may or may not use that to run lots of different quotes. The endorsement section is where the endorsements that you have in place would show up. So in this particular example, this shows some various different endorsements. This first one's already passed, right? So this was the end of last year. It shows how much milk production they declared on that endorsement. It shows how much it cost them. This was the floor they set, and this was the indemnity amount. So in this case, this is already passed. That's what they did get paid. On this one going forward, this is April through June. So this is the quarter that we just started. They declared 6 million pounds. The cost of that was 38 cents a hundredweight. The floor that they locked in was $17.17. And this shows no indemnity. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, no indemnity. We spent the money and we didn't get anything back. But what this means is that the money came from the market. The price was high enough so that it didn't trigger the insurance. And yes, that risk management, that knowing what this floor would be, setting that floor had a cost to it. But at the same time, we far exceeded that and we're able to get the money from the market rather than from an insurance product. But this screen shows what those endorsements are. If there is an indemnity predicted, it will predict that out as far as, in this case, the end of the year. Okay, if you had more endorsements on here, it would show those and it would show you what your estimated indemnity would be. Okay, so this is a place where you could see that. Again, you could use that for budgeting, trying to determine what you had. And one of the things that I do a lot with people is look at their budget, do it on a monthly basis for cash flow purposes, and we look real carefully and closely at the difference between their variable costs and their overhead costs. And sometimes we think about marginal milk, and we think if we can make a little bit more milk and all we need to really cover is our variable costs, there might be certain quarters of the year where that's the case if you want to get really technical. And you might want to, for a pretty low price, you could lock in a low floor, but know that that was going to cover all your variable costs for the year. So you could do a lot of different strategies and a lot of different techniques on thinking about trying to lock in some coverage and set that price. Okay, and as I said, there's some other tabs here. There's a lot of stuff. We've kind of just barely scratched the surface here on this quoting tool. The main thing that I want to just kind of review in summary is, this tool is a great place to play around and quote stuff. Some people do their auto insurance this way, right? They get on progressive.com or Geico and check every single car they might want to buy to see what the price would be. Well, if you're that type of person, this part of the tool is for you. You can look at it every different which way and see which might be the best way for you to insure the coverage. If not, you may not use that. You may just use the triggers and use the alert feature so that you could set an idea, set a plan with your agent, and then get alerts. So even if you forget what you talked about, you know when to call and say, hey, what did we talk about again? I got an alert. Is today the day that I need to lock in? What do I need to do? Okay, so whether depending on how hands-on you want to be, you might use one or the other of those. And the other part that I want to talk about a little bit is, especially in the tier program here in Maine, a lot of people think, well, we've got the state support. We've got some support from the state. Other states are jealous of the coverage that we've got through the state of Maine. And that's great. And if you put that in for budgeting purposes, if you enter that number here on your expected basis, you can really think about this is the number that you're locking in, that $20.42. Even though the revenue guarantee is $19.40, right? That's what you're locking in or guaranteeing from the DRP program. But for budgeting purposes, what you're really locking in as far as what you can afford, whether you can pay your employees, whether you can afford to pay your feed bill, is this number right here. Because you can guarantee this from the DRP program, you should be able to have a normal year and make decent amount of butterfat and protein. And maybe you have an idea of whether you're going to be able to do that or not based on your forages and so forth that you put in the year before. But as long as you can have a standard year as far as production goes, you can lock in a pretty good price. And lots of times people just think of this price. Well, what do? I'm locking in $17.91, and I know my cost of production is $20. Well, that $17.91 is guaranteeing you with your basis, with the tier program money that you should get, that you can bank on at least for the next year or two, until they vote on it again in Augusta. You can bank on that. You can bank on some money for components. Hopefully you'll make your quality too if that number's in here. Now what you've really locked in is $20.27. Okay. So that's the main thing that I wanted to just sort of discuss, is thinking about what it really means to lock in that number with DRP, how you can explore that and look at it some different ways, how you can use this tool to set up some alerts, and especially how you can use it to budget and make a plan and try and execute that plan and be more secure in the decisions that you're making by having a good budget and a good plan, which is what I talk with my clients about a lot, whether we're talking about DRP or various budgeting in general. It's 12:52, so we've got about 8 minutes left of our allotted time. If you have any questions, now would be a great time. And maybe we should share it back to Devin. She's the one who had the questions page. We could splash up there. But if there's any questions, ask away, and the three of us will see if we can answer those.
Thanks, Ethan. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. One of them, I believe the first one would be for you, Ethan. How do I figure out the cost of production for my operation so I can set a target price?
Great question. Great question. There's a couple of different ways to do that. The simplest way, usually cost of production, is done by cost per hundredweight. So in this example, in the Quota tool I had there, was $17.10. So the simplest way to do that is to add up all your expenses. The roughest way to do that is to grab your tax return, add up all your expenses that are on your tax return, and divide it by the amount of milk, the number of hundredweights that you shipped, and that would give you, a real rough idea. A much better way to do that is to find a tool. There's some online. That's something that I can help you with. You may be able to work with an extension agent to do that, and just get a little more in depth and make sure that all the expenses that you're including in there were really management expenses. The quickest example of that is our tax returns all have depreciation on them. We use depreciation. It's important to count that in your cost of production, but sometimes, and 2020 could have been a good example of that, if we've had a profitable year, we may accelerate our depreciation. We may take a little extra depreciation in that year to minimize our tax bill. So if that's the case, we really want to know what our cost of production is to make milk, not what we're telling the IRS our cost of production is, or what we're showing the tax man exactly. So some of those kind of things are important to think about, and make sure that you isolate those expenses and think carefully about what really goes into making 100 pounds of milk on your farm.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ethan. Another question in the chat. This one would be probably for Tristan. Is there one pricing option better than another?
So to answer that question, the best answer is probably to definitely reach out to your agent and have that conversation. As I work with my customers over here in Eastern New York, that really goes on a farm by farm basis as far as components versus class in the scenario that we have. Typically, we fall into a class pricing scenario on most operations. A big reason behind that is just we can ensure, knowing that there's a basis portion that we add back into that milk check that includes the tier program. It includes the component values that we're making above the Boston blend price there. Knowing all those factors, we can still create a similar type scenario utilizing a class pricing option over components. And the reason we do that is a couple. There's two main reasons. One, typically premium. So the premium's typically cheaper on a class option over a component option. And the other is, if we think of unit structure in our corn crop insurance, not sure how familiar everyone is with that, but we can look at it two different ways. And with a component option, we're really ensuring an enterprise unit. There's a blend price there that could be helpful and could be opportunistic during certain times and certain market movements, but it really is creating that blend price. When we get into the other side of it, on the class side, I tend to look at that more as an optional unit structure where we're breaking it out a lot more. We're creating more opportunities to ensure that milk, to really spread the risk out and try and capitalize or opportunize or catch any opportunities that could come on that market movement where we don't have a blended price there. So if 3 goes up and 4 goes down, just like we saw in 2020, those are the times where splitting that out, utilizing class endorsements tend to make more sense for producers. You know, I had some producers that did have component endorsements and some that did class endorsements for 2020. And there was definitely a big difference being able to split that out and create a more flexible program for those operations. So that's the long and short of the answer, Devin. Thanks.
Thank you, Tristan. So we have 3 minutes left on the webinar. Is there anyone on the call that would like to ask a question over the phone? I don't see any in the chat right now. Okay, none in the chat. With that, I guess we can conclude our webinar. Thank you for attending, everyone out there, and thank you to our panelists who joined us today. And have a nice afternoon.